Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're here to talk about automating through the red tape, talk about what that means and how we think we achieve that. My name, as Ryan said, is Mike Duncan. I work for Raymond James Technology. I've been with the company for just over 5 years, and I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to work with and manage two very talented teams of software engineers and systems engineers on the automation and monitoring and instrumentation teams.
My name is Tim Eckert. I've worked at Raymond James for just a little under 10 years now. I've worked under Mike for, I believe, 5 years-ish at this time, and I've had the pleasure of working with him this entire time through app support and now monitoring automation as well.
For those of you who aren't aware or don't know of Raymond James, it's a diversified financial services company offering a wide range of services, including asset management, investment banking, and financial advisor services. We currently have over 20,000 employees and have been in business for over 60 years in a highly regulated industry.
From a technical perspective, this means that we're running about 22,000 servers on-prem, over about 10,000 containers on-prem that run about 4,000 applications. Those applications are generating about 100,000 incidents a year that are actioned upon a human. And then there's about 1,000 Datadog synthetics monitoring those with 7,000 monitors attached to those. We'll talk about it a little bit more detail later, but aggregate monitors from a Datadog perspective allow us to scale those 7,000 monitors to those 22,000 servers and automatically monitor things as they enter our environment or leave our environment.
As you might imagine, creating such automation services is a collaborative effort. We've worked with a number of teams. What we're showing here are the core teams we've had to work with in our industry to ensure that we give highly effective and regulated in the regulated industry we work in.
Something to note with this key contributors slide is that this isn't a siloed operation, especially in our industry, right? Like everyone has a piece in this. There is the monitoring automation side of it, our change management for our automation or for our auditing and regulatory, our incident management who's doing our major incidents and also making sure that we aren't avoiding incidents or ignoring incidents. Our site reliability engineers who want to make sure that our environments are performative and are stable. We want to make sure that our automations aren't creating more problems or causing problems before they kind of self-resolve themselves. Security, obviously very key important. Finance, we want to be as secure as possible. And then our command center, which is our kind of version of a NOC, for instance, where we monitor all those alerts. And finally, our application support, the people who own our applications and develop our applications, because we want them to be aware of how we're fixing their applications or if there are systemic issues so that they can ultimately fix those issues in upcoming sprints and upcoming development. And this is kind of a high-level process of what we came up with, kind of summarized into 8 steps. So Datadog generates this great alert from a monitor. That monitor then comes into our service management tool. That is an incident that gets generated from that. From that incident, we have a remediation payload that follows that alert around. We parse that remediation payload, then we trigger the specific remediations in step 4. Based off of those remediations, we open regulatory, change tickets, incident tickets, all that kind of audit and such that's needed. We process those remediations, and then we close out those change tickets with the state of those remediations and any actions, whether it be servers or containers that we took or anything that was modified during that process. And then finally, Datadog comes back with Datadog's integration and resolves our incident, our service management tool, and additionally on top of that is adding all of that context from the change ticket into the service or into the incident within our service management tool. Moving kind of from there, this is kind of like that typical Datadog monitor for a Windows service or a Linux service. We have this application that is, the Death Star. It's in a production environment. We're looking for the host tag and the service tag from that monitor. And we're kind of looking over the last 4 iterations of that. And we want the count by status. This is kind of where we first start to see that we are using those tags that are on those hosts and on those alerts to get data out of those alerts. We see that when the alert will trigger into the title, we'll take the service name and trigger it rather than hard code that to be some kind of service from there. And then this is the payload that we kind of designed for our remediation. In this case, it's a service restart. We have a ton of different types of remediations. We have different service restarts. We have different disk cleanups, different reboot actions, depending on what is broken. And then we have a payload that comes under it. The payload is a JSON array of objects. And that's important because we want to be able to execute one or hundreds of steps if needed. So the host here in this case, Destar, we're giving it a command of restart. We're putting a little retry logic in here. So you want to loop 3 times, retry, sleep in 90 seconds, and then we want to restart the tractor beam service. But that's also an array because maybe the server has 20 or 30 services that need to be restarted in a chain. We'll process those one right after the other to make sure that the shutdown is clean and the restart is clean as well. It just has like a note to wrap around this slide. If you're writing remediation to solve problems for people of things that are happening in production, make sure your automation is stable and it recovers itself. So in this case, we have retry logic in here, and that's really important because you don't want someone to be like, well, the automation failed, so why am I using automation, right? We want to be able to have people to be able to configure retries, backout logic, any of that kind of stuff. From there, though, we can take that JSON and kind of standardize it and abstract it a little bit more and take those variables and those tags that Datadog gives us and bring those out of the Datadog monitor and bring them into the message body. And now we have an even more abstract JSON. So we're taking the host that is alerting and putting it as the host name, and we're taking the service that's alerting and putting it in the service spot. This allows us to take an alert, like we mentioned before, 22,000 servers, 7,000 alerts. Now this alert can monitor 1 or 10,000 servers if we needed it to, because the host name is provided by Datadog and the service name is provided by Datadog.
And it was important to our group to keep these standardized. Through most of our automations, we've got 7 to 10 different payloads that we'll put in. But those can be used across the board because we are using variables that Datadog provides us. Yeah. So it's not a large number of JSON that we have to keep up with, version, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And something I mentioned, like hopefully at some point you're also creating these monitors with automation and keeping those to your standards as well. One of the big things that you kind of will run into inevitably, right, is as you scale, you don't want your monitors to scale one-to-one with your servers because that becomes unmanageable for your environment. Now when an application is decommed or it moves up a tier in support or something, you now have a big problem because you now have a bunch of monitors you have to go back and manage. And even if they're in Terraform, Terraform is still code that has to be updated. Someone still has to go in and look at that. And then if you automate Terraform, you have to update the automation that is making your Terraform. It's just an endless cycle. So reducing the amount of monitors and standardizing is a huge benefit perspective. And then this is kind of what that monitor now looks like. Everything else is the same for the most part, except now in the message body, we have that JSON, and we're relying on those variables and those tags that are being brought in by Datadog to fill into that message template. Once this runs, we end up with an output that looks similar to this. And this is kind of what we put in our change tickets. This is kind of what we put into our incident management tickets, the various auditing requirements. And it is an array of JSON that states this is the remediation action that was taken on a host, on a service, what was the command, what was the exit status, what does the service look like after remediation. So in this case, it was successful. We get to see the output of the restarted service, for instance, and we get to see that exit status. If there was an error, we will see that error there. We see that it's running, and we see that it's only been active for a minute. It's good to see that it's been active for X amount of time, because depending on the service, some services will report that they restarted, but didn't actually restart. So this gives us the audit to go back and look and say, hey, this actually did restart because it's been only active for a minute, and this alert's less than a minute old.
And this was actually required, or a lot of the information here is required by our compliance and our other teams. It documents, or we document every step and everything we do within the remediation. If the remediation fails for whatever reason, and we've had about a 1% chance of that, we document this and then send it over to the normal incident remediation team or the sysadmin command center. And they're able to automatically look through every step we've taken, get the error messages so they can go right to the point where we had the problem and start to investigate.
This is kind of the same high-level flow that we showed before, but we kind of put where that input JSON and that output JSON get written from a audit perspective. Something to note on that step 8, like Mike was mentioning, we don't resolve an incident manually. We let Datadog resolve the incident. That means if the issue is not fixed, Datadog doesn't resolve the incident, and it is in someone's queue to be worked manually. So automation is the first step. Maybe it's the second step if we have like a backup step, but it's not the final action if it doesn't need to be, so that humans can take action on it if there's a more complex problem. Just, services fail because sometimes, out of memory and stuff, that's an easy restart. But if the service fails because the database is down, automation may not be able to bring the database up, but we at least know that restarting the service wasn't the solution, and that has been eliminated for the person who's now going to manually look at it. And it's all about kind of funneling down those incidents that a human has to work on, right? Those 100,000 incidents may become, 60,000 incidents, but there's 40,000 of them that are now being automated by system resolution kind of thing. And then
the other thing is we also put flags in that if this is a critical system, that will automatically X-matter the teams that are necessary. So it doesn't necessarily go to command center. We can escalate to the teams, the development teams and the management that need to get involved, whether it's in the middle of the night, middle of the day. So it's very actionable.
Mm-hmm. Here, just kind of by the numbers.
So what's it all mean in the end? Let's take a quick look at the alert management landscape. Currently, we're taking care of basically 52% of our incidents in an automated fashion using this technology. We're currently using 48% as basically manual. You might ask why, if this works so efficiently, why do we still have 48% on manual? Well, the reason is we don't want to boil the ocean here. We want to make sure what we put in works properly and we don't cause problems that we're trying to avoid initially. Next, let's look at the split between non-prod and prod environments. We have currently 42% of our automation on non-prod. You might ask why. Well, Raymond James is a global company. We have people working 24/7. Our main command center is in St. Pete. So in the middle of the night, when we have developers working on the other side of the world, they might need their system started up or things they can't get access to. We can put the remediation on those to keep development teams working 24/7, 365. Also, we encourage developers to go through non-prod, dev and QA, step into production. Now, I know developers don't make mistakes. I was a developer for many years. I never put a bug out. I put features out and opportunities for enhancement. But on that rare occurrence that somebody puts something in incorrectly, we like them to test it in non-prod environments before they step into production. Also, the 48% we still have manually. Do I believe we'll get to 100%? No, that's not realistic. 90%, probably. The reason for that is the continual change in our environments and the acquisitions we go through on an annual basis.
Yeah, from an additional thing of, developers never make mistakes. As the developer of some of this automation, right, being in that non-production environment from an automation perspective gives us the comfort of testing as well. We get to also test in our non-production environments as well. So we use feature flags and we kind of slow roll out automation changes into our non-production monitors and our non-production systems. And then from there, those kind of get to be our early adopters. We get to see how those react to those changes, and those changes eventually make it into our production environment as well. So when we do get to our production environment, we have the confidence that not only the application that we're remediating is stable, but the application doing the remediation is stable as well and meets all of those requirements. Then we didn't drop a log somewhere or drop a ticket somewhere, or didn't meet some compliance need or something to that effect. Let's take a look at the efficiencies that we've gained here. The data set you're looking at it's a subset collected over 24 months. It's roughly 20,000 remediations or incidents that we've resolved. On the bottom, the 1 through 15 are minutes to resolution. As you can see, we currently take care of about 70% of our resolutions under 60 seconds. That's not just taking care of the
issue is doing all the auditable documentation that's necessary to get this back up and running and assure that we've done it properly. Now you do see that we go out to 15 minutes on these and sometimes go over, but that depends on the complexity of the remediation we're doing. If it's a service start, app restart, of course it's going to take under 60 seconds. If we get out to doing rolling restarts on multiple servers or cleanup on multiple disks, it could go out to 15 minutes or more. But keep in mind, no person has to get involved with that. That's all done behind the scenes. So there's no impact, no resources needed, and we get a great end user experience. If you look at this, this is a difference between the same data set, 24 months, comparing manual and automated remediation. The red is the automated remediation, green, of course, is the automated remediation. And I think we can all see the difference here. 60% of the manual remediation goes over 15 minutes. That's highly impactful, not only to our users, but also to, in this highly regulated industry, we have to have audit teams come in. We have regulatory committees come in. It's highly impactful.
Just to touch on some other things here too, from a consistency perspective, right? We see this consistency at that 70% under 60 seconds, and then really over the 15 minutes is just the end aggregate point. At this point, this chart falls very far to the right side from a manual perspective. So we know that when we put automation on something, that the mean time to that resolution, the mean time to that getting back into service is going to be under that 60 seconds. And humans, unfortunately, aren't that fast when it comes to getting a ticket and resolving it. So we are increasing that availability for our clients, or that uptime and process. Looking at something like even like Aptec scores, under 60 seconds is still like a frustrated signal, like in a single refresh, right? So most likely we have restarted something and brought it back up within a single refresh of somebody being frustrated and then retrying it and working.
The other thing with the automated remediation we should mention is, because we've worked with all the teams that we have, the security and compliance, we've taken what we're doing as auto remediation, and we're able to do that as a stanger change during the day. A lot of the manual changes, you might have to limp along to the end of the day to a change window, or if it's a very critical system, you might have to limp along to the weekend in order to do another rollout. With the automated remediation we've created, 24/7, 365, we can do the changes without any kind of escalation to SVPs or VPs to allow us to do emergency change orders. So let's take a look at the tangible benefits that we have here. Again, this is the same data set. It's about 20,000 remediations over a 24-month period, roughly. On the left-hand side, you can see the count of the remediations per month, and on the right-hand side, our estimated cost savings. As you can see, it's quite impactful. Overall, over 24 months, we've saved about $1.5 million. If you average this out, that's about 60,000 roughly a month, and roughly 700, on average, 700 incidents resolved a month. This is just the start. As you can see, we're slowly gaining traction with this, and we still have another 40 or 50% of our infrastructure and our alerting that we're going to turn over to this in a given amount of time, of course, in a safe environment.
And that's just current infrastructure and current monitoring state, right? That doesn't account for any acquisitions, any growth, or any of that. This also will grow with the company as well, based off of those monitors that are just bringing in data as we put in infrastructure hosts, as we put in containers, etc. Something else that Mike mentioned, and I forgot to mention earlier that Mike kind of touched on there, as from an automated perspective, this is all making sure that we follow the correct path, but there is still manual work that needs to be done, or people who maybe aren't fully comfortable with the automation. Like, I'm not sure if I want my thing to be automatically recovered, or I don't know if I want some alert triggering some restart of my service. So we also provide a UI for the same system that we allow people to go in and provide the incident and like kind of the what is broken information that a monitor might bring. And then they can say, but I want to restart this thing, or I want to reboot this thing, or I want to clear this thing. and then you fill all that out, and we run the same automation. You've just now triggered it manually. And that gives us this consistency and more standardization from a perspective of like change and audit. They know the same steps were taken. A human didn't go into the wrong server by like off by one number and mess something else up or down a system accidentally. Instead, they can go, this is the, this thing looked up the server name. It did the exact steps that were, been tested multiple times in a non-production or a production environment from that perspective.
And if they use this, they are allowed the same access as the automation that we have in the Datadog alert. They can do it 24/7. If it's in the middle of the day, it's been approved. They don't have to go through an ECR or approvals from SVPs. They can just enter the information. It's going through the same logic that's been vetted by our security and compliance groups.
And from that perspective, we are making sure that we go in and look for the devices or the things that may be sending it traffic. We remove the traffic as much as possible from the device that's being remediated so that we can even lower the impact even further. We do make sure, and as if you're writing your own automation, there's a give and take there, right? To, you don't want it to be taking traffic, but we also don't want an automation that runs for an hour while it's serving really bad traffic. So we have some limits and some configurable amounts that we set there working with our team so that you can come and bring how long do you want me to wait before I just, cut this thing off. And in some cases, people don't want to wait at all. They want it remediated as fast as possible. They'll take an extra 2 or 3 errors to get that done. And in some other cases, they want to wait a little bit longer. So as the next steps, kind of what comes next from an automation perspective for us. So as we kind of showed, there's JSON behind this. We're kind of putting stuff in message templates. A lot of this is something that we developed a little bit in-house. So we kind of want to move a little bit towards Datadog workflows. We always envision that JSON will exist, especially for our more complex customers. There's a lot of people who have something that alerts on A, and it's what C needs restarted or E needs restarted, and then get back to B and then back to A kind of thing. But for those simple things, the ones that, they just need a service restarted, that is a self-alerting kind of thing. We hope to use Datadog workflows so those people don't have to learn the JSON. We can just do a little at mention of the workflow, take some data from the monitor, or maybe even call back into the monitor and get the data after the fact, and send that off to our remediation. And then Datadog App Builder is also another thing that we want to look into. We kind of mentioned that we wrote a UI. The UI is not in Datadog, unfortunately, but we'd like to bring some of those UI application pieces into Datadog via App Builder. So Datadog App Builder will allow you to build an application, embed it within a dashboard, or put it as a standalone application. We hope to bring some of these restarting buttons into dashboards where you will select. You can see that, oh, this is high on CPU, high in memory, bad disk, etc. Just let me take action within the dashboard. We'll do a little RBAC checking of the logged in user, allow you to do the action or tell you need to refer to your support team. Both Datadog Workflows and Application Builder are adding support for on-premises connections, and it's something that we've been testing with Datadog, and it's really going to enable a lot of this because, unfortunately or fortunately, because of the finance world, a lot of this stuff still sits in data centers, doesn't get to sit in the cloud, or has on-premise components that we will have to leverage to get that remediation and automation out. And then last, we want to, we have great numbers, we have a lot of great remediations, stuff that we report on, but we want to bring those metrics back into Datadog and alert on them when something doesn't quite look right or doesn't quite go right. So taking those metrics and tagging applications that are going through restarts, tagging services that are going through restarts, apply monitors to those, apply anomaly detection to those. So now our support teams are getting alerts that are saying, hey, we resolved this issue, but application A, there's something systemically wrong with it because it's being restarted 30 times today or 40 times today. Or after that release on the weekend, well, the app is still up, and that might be what you care about, but it's really running high in memory, and we have to restart it every 5 minutes because JMX metrics say that it's in GC turmoil or something to that effect, or .NET GC is, large object heap has too much in it. So those are kind of the next steps we would like to see, and we're kind of working on those throughout the next year, and maybe next year we'll be back to talk about some of those and what we've integrated.
One of the things to keep in mind that we are in a highly regulated industry. I don't know how many of you work in the finance world, but we had to go and collaborate with all these teams for that reason. it was imperative that we got them involved so it would work for all of our groups, all of our teams across the board. If you're not in that highly regulated industry, you're not going to have to go through those complexities. That took a lot of time and a lot of effort to put those in and assure we logged everything properly. And all of our committees were happy with it, auditable and usable and maintainable.
And that's what we got. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it.